Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Eldred, and I'm with the Center for Best Practices. Thank you for joining us today for the Breakfast After the Bell Best Practices for High Schools webinar. So before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items to go over. First, attendees are in listen-only mode, and we will be recording this webinar today. We will take questions at the end of the webinar, so please use the question box for your questions and we will read them out loud or respond to them individually. The webinar recording and resource links will be sent later this week. So without further ado, I would like to introduce my colleague, Summer Kriegshauser, to start the webinar. Thanks, Stephanie, and thank you all for joining us today. We're so excited about the Breakfast After the Bell webinar focusing on high schools. The purpose of this webinar, because we've been hearing over and over again, is high schools are just a completely different animal in terms of breakfast programs and specifically Breakfast After the Bell. So hopefully we have set up a really fantastic webinar for you today where you can take information back with you about Breakfast After the Bell best practices that are applicable specifically for your high school population. So in terms of an agenda, I'm going to start us off with just some Breakfast After the Bell basics. I'll talk about the models that we know are most successful, and then dive in a little bit about what we know have worked in high schools. And the bulk of the webinar really is going to go to those real world examples. We have some fantastic speakers with us today from Chicago Public Schools and Guilford County Schools that are going to give you their expertise and their experience about running Breakfast After the Bell programs in high schools. And then we're going to leave a little bit of time for questions at the end. So feel free to wait. We have built-in time if you have questions. So I'd love to introduce our speakers. Like my colleague Stephanie was kind enough to do, I am Summer Kriegshauser. I am the Senior Program Manager here at No Kid Hungry. I'm with the Center for Best Practices. And then from Chicago Public Schools in the Nutrition Support Services Department, we have Allison Polk and Crystal Cooper. And then from Guilford County Schools, we have Adnan Raja. So we are super excited to have them share their experiences today. So now let's just do a quick poll. I'd love to hear more about you listeners and why you are on this webinar, what you'd like to do. So clearly there are three options. Today you're either just finding out more information about Breakfast After the Bell, perhaps you're actually thinking about implementing a Breakfast After the Bell program in your high school, or you've already implemented and you just want to find out more information about how to make your program successful. So we'll give a few more seconds, maybe 10 seconds or so for those of you who haven't filled out the poll, and then we can move on. Great, thanks everyone. So it looks like the majority of you today are finding out about Breakfast After the Bell. This is super, super exciting. I love it that some of you are already thinking about it and that you have already implemented. So we have a good variety of folks on the phone today. So let's go ahead and start to share information. So I want to start off by giving just a little bit of information about No Kid Hungry, what we do, and really our mission and why Breakfast After the Bell is important to us. Here at No Kid Hungry, our mission is to end childhood hunger domestically, and we know that that's a pretty large task, so we approach that problem in multiple ways. One, we work on feeding kids, and that's working on expanding access to the federal meals program. Certainly school breakfast being one of those, but we also focus on summer meals and after-school meals. We also go into communities and teach families about how to make the most of healthy food. And then we also mobilize the public and our leaders. This means we work with elected officials, not only at the state level and the local level, but also at the federal level on working on passing policy that would move the needle on childhood hunger. Great, so let's dive right into just some Breakfast After the Bell basics and talk a little bit about why traditional cafeteria breakfast doesn't work. And traditional cafeteria breakfast being breakfast in the school that is before the school day starts and it's held in the cafeteria. There are a lot of issues with traditional cafeteria breakfast that just don't enable all students to access the breakfast program. And many of these reasons are outlined here right now, but one is that the bus or the carpool does not arrive in time. Oftentimes students get to school by carpooling, or maybe a caretaker takes them, and so they have no control over what time they actually get to school, and they may miss cafeteria breakfast as a result. There is a stigma that school breakfast is for the poor kids, and so they avoid the school cafeteria in the morning because of that. Certainly reduced price is nice, but it might not be reduced enough for some students. And some students may not be hungry first thing in the morning, and this is huge for high school students and even some middle school students where they just have a completely different sleeping pattern. And so when they get to school at 7:30, 8 o'clock, they're not hungry at all, and so by the time mid-morning comes around, they're starving, and that's when you see maybe behavioral issues or lack of focus because they're really just hungry in the morning. And then depending on the layout of the actual school campus, the cafeteria might just be really far away from where the actual classes are. And so students can't risk missing class or being tardy, so they skip out on breakfast in the morning. And then socializing for sure can be way more fun than eating cafeteria breakfast in the morning. And we see this a lot with high schools and middle schools. So how do we directly target these barriers? Well, at No Kid Hungry, we highly promote making breakfast a part of the school day. Making breakfast a part of the school day definitely addresses those barriers of traditional cafeteria breakfast, and it increases access to more students so they're able to start the day with a healthy meal. So let's talk about the models that we know are very effective in increasing access and enabling students to eat more breakfast. The top three that you see, breakfast in the classroom, second chance breakfast, and grab and go to the classroom, those are the most effective, and the numbers that you see on the left are real numbers based on participation rates from schools that No Kid Hungry has worked with. And this is the percentage of free and reduced lunch eaters eating breakfast. So if we are looking at breakfast in the classroom, 88% of the free and reduced population is eating breakfast. That's what schools can achieve by implementing breakfast in the classroom. Now, breakfast in the classroom is where breakfast is served and consumed in the classroom. Now, this means maybe cafeteria staff can bring breakfast to the classroom, but we've often seen student helpers do it. This gets students involved, allows them to have some ownership of the breakfast program, and it allows for leadership opportunities for students. Then we have second chance breakfast. And this is very popular in high schools and middle schools because this breakfast is served not first thing in the morning, but it's served either after first period or a break between the beginning of the school day and lunch, right when that hunger sets in for those high school students and sometimes middle school students. We see this model implemented in a couple ways in schools. Often we see schools implement using a grab and go style. So, first period ends and all of the breakfast items are maybe out in the hallway in a kiosk or a cart, and students simply grab their breakfast components and head off to the next class. We also see this model implemented using cafeteria style, where schools will actually carve out a break mid-morning so students can go to the cafeteria, have their breakfast, and schools allot 10 to 15 minutes so students can eat. So there's a couple of options with that model there. And then grab and go to the classroom. This is where students come into school and they essentially grab their breakfast on the way to class and they eat it there. Often this is, they're grabbing breakfast that's already been put into a package. So the meal components are already there for them. They just have to pick up the bag and head to class. Or you can set up like a table and have crates that have the meal components out so the students know to grab the components that they need to make a reimbursable meal and then head to class. We definitely recommend allowing students to eat in class because we have seen participation rise greatly if you actually give students a place to eat as opposed to giving them breakfast and expecting them to walk while they're eating to class. And then at the very bottom of the slide, as you can see, there's traditional cafeteria breakfast at 50%, which we think is too low because we know using these other models, you can get them much, much higher. And some of the best practices that we've seen, and these best practices come from schools that we worked with across the country, are choose a breakfast after the bell model that works for your school. We know that every school is different. The needs of the student population are different, and certainly the layout of the school is different. So know that you can use any model that works for you, or even adapt a model to make it fit your needs. So again, grab and go to the classroom definitely allows students to eat in class, deliver breakfast to the classroom to take the guesswork out for students. They know where breakfast is going to be. All they have to do is show up to the classroom. And definitely offer second chance breakfast. And again, this allows those students who get hungry mid-morning to have the opportunity to eat breakfast. Another best practice that we promote is making students a part of the conversation. High school students are very different from elementary school students in terms of the desire to participate. They want to know what they're eating, and they want to be a part of the process. And so engaging students by soliciting feedback, maybe doing menu testing, really can help create buy-in for the breakfast program from students, because then they really become a part of it. And then it's nice to be able to utilize peer influence. If there are students that are early adopters of the breakfast program that do have some peer influence, that can also be a great way to elevate the breakfast program and really make it more appealing to other students. And then finally, brand your breakfast. If your competition is the 7-Eleven down the street, make your breakfast just as appealing, if not more appealing, because we know the school breakfast is going to be healthier and it's going to be more affordable. So be excited about your breakfast, market it with enthusiasm, and see if you can come up with items that are similar to those commercial items that students would find appealing. At the very bottom, as you can see, there's this resource called Making Breakfast After the Bell Work in middle and high schools, and that resource was created out of these best practices. So this is hyperlinked, and when you get the presentation and the follow-up email, you should just be able to click on it and view the resource. So with that, I'm very excited to hand over this webinar to Allison Polk and Crystal Cooper from Chicago Public Schools, who will share some really exciting things that are happening in Chicago Public Schools.
Thank you. Hi, this is Crystal Cooper from Chicago Public Schools. I am the Director of Nutrition Support Services, and I have Allison here with me, who's our registered dietitian. And we're going to talk through what we kind of do here in Chicago. Next slide, please. So here are some high-level stats about CPS. What's important here, a few things I want you to look at, is that we are 100% what we call CEP. So we do participate in the Community Eligibility Provision Program, and we're 100%, which means all of our students receive a breakfast and a lunch free if they choose to. We also serve over 70 million meals a year. This includes breakfast, lunch, and after school. And that last note there, the State of Illinois Breakfast After the Bell legislation. So in the early part of the year, the State of Illinois mandated that if you are 70% or more free or reduced, you have to have a breakfast after the bell policy. And what we did here at CPS in June was that we actually passed that policy. So if you go to our policy website, that is something out there that says that all schools must have a breakfast after the bell policy. Next slide, please. So how do we manage here at CPS? We actually are we have a food service management company, so we are not self-operated. Aramark is that company. We have a central office staff of about 27 folks between budget, HR, special programs, student health and wellness. In our kitchens, we have over 2,700 employees. So we have a manager, we have a porter, we have what we call a lunchroom attendant, and we have cooks in all of our schools. They are CPS employees. And then to the right, you see we have Aramark. So how we manage this is Aramark has an operational team of district managers and food service directors that are assigned to about 20 to 30 schools, and they work with those schools to help us implement Breakfast After the Bell, lunch, and all the other programs that we run. Next slide. So here we want to do a short, about 3.5-minute video.
So it's really important for students to have a good breakfast at the start of their day because it helps them to focus throughout their classes. And many times, students have lengthy classes here. We're on block schedules, and so having a breakfast at the start of the day really helps them to continue to be motivated and energized throughout the day in their class. So I'm an advocate for the Breakfast After the Bell program at our school because it starts after first period and it allows our students who might have come in a few minutes late to still get breakfast and still get the nourishment that they need to focus on their instruction and on their studies throughout the day. The process for students to obtain a hot or a cold breakfast is they enter the school building and they go into the cafeteria and pick up a paper bag breakfast, and then they have a few minutes to eat in the cafeteria before they go to their classes. So the way Breakfast After the Bell is implemented here, our students can come in, if they come in 15 minutes after our first period starts, they can still go to the cafeteria and get breakfast.
86% of our students live at or just above the poverty level. And many of the meals that we serve here will be their only meals. To know that you've got 400,000 students that need you every day and the decisions you make are going to have the best possible outcomes for them is important. Those agencies that support us, whether it's Healthy Food Campaign, Aramark, CLOC, those that are focused on childhood obesity, it's important that they keep us honest about what we do for kids.
Our teachers have shared that, students that don't have access to a breakfast, oftentimes they can't focus as well in their classes. And with Breakfast After the Bell and them having access to getting breakfast, they see an increased participation amongst their students in their classrooms. So just the other day, I was walking through the hall and I saw two students sitting on the bench with a bagged breakfast, and they had a sausage English muffin, and they were so excited about it. And I said, hey, that's awesome. What do you think that the bagged breakfast, what opportunity is it providing you? And they said, before I left home today, I didn't have a hot breakfast, and this really allowed me to get the nutrition that I need to be able to focus in my classes. And, listening to those two students and the impact that the Breakfast After the Bell has had on them really just touched my heart, because I think this is part of why we do this, is because we want to remove any barriers that students may have or may face or not have accessibility to a hot breakfast or a cold breakfast at home, so that they can focus on getting the high quality education that they deserve.
Folks, just want to let you know that we will be sure to circulate the video after the webinar so that you can watch it in full. We apologize if there was a little bit of a audio-visual delay.
Thank you. Okay, so as Summer was saying, branding is really important to us. So if you saw in the video and when you get a chance to see, what we really tasked Aramark with, one function of the marketing is to really market the program. So we have new hot and cold bags. We do several videos. We get tutorial testimonials. We get lots of feedback, and we share it with the school staff. We share it with principals so that they know what's coming as far as new items. We actually have a newsletter that goes out to our staff as well. So we have a lot of marketing materials that we can actually share later. So on this slide, you're going to look at the breakfast after the bell model. So we just saw the grab and go model, which is in a big chunk of the high schools, which incorporates, they're basically bags that you grab them from a mobile service cart, and they're placed in high traffic areas, and they're either carried to the classrooms or other approved spaces by the principal. We also have breakfast vending. So we have 12 schools that currently participate in vending. So they're vending machines with a reimbursable meal, and they're on and available during breakfast, and breakfast, obviously breakfast after the bell. We've now worked with principals to keep them on up until probably a little bit before lunch, depending on where they are located and what the traffic is like. But we do have those vending machines. The students use an ID that they create, and they get the machines, and we can then grab the data later. We also, as Summer mentioned, we do have the second chance model in the schools, where basically you eat during a break or after first period. It looks a lot like grab and go. Some of the schools, depending on what's going on, will have the security guards kind of have the meals, and there's a sheet where they can check off a name, so that we can make sure that we're, capturing that information when we go to claim the meal. Next slide, please. So what are some of the successes and struggles with implementing breakfast after the bell, specifically in high schools? As you can see from the video, we have a lot of student engagement. When we introduce new items, we obviously put it up on our menu. Again, we do marketing, we do blasts. Logistically, if a school has multiple interests, this helps with, making sure that the students know where the carts are. This is something that they can see every day. It's something they recognize. They know their dining staff, so they're pretty comfortable with them. School autonomy helps with this process. Facilities, our custodians and our engineers and any other folks in the building really work with our dining staff to make sure that, from a waste perspective, from a garbage perspective, they have everything ready at the stations or in the classrooms, so the students know exactly where to go when they are done with the breakfast. And again, we really push the state policy and the fact that CPS has adopted this policy to say, this is where breakfast is going. This is what we, as a state, believes, that when a child is, well fed and nutritious, they do better in the classroom. So we really work with the principals to get this push. Now, that is also a struggle for us, right? So some principals don't want to be bothered with what they think will be trash. They don't want to, sometimes they'll say, we are promoting kids coming to school tardy, right? That's not the intent here. The intent is to make sure that each student, when they come through the doors, regardless of the time, has something to eat before they actually, go to class, or even if they come in after the first period, they still have something. And again, logistics is on both sides, because some of our high schools are smaller. They only have one entry. The principals may only want the students to come through one door, and we just look at that and we work, again, with the administration. We may have some folks from the health and wellness go out to the school. We may have our food service director from Aramark go out. We talk to the staff. We really have an enveloping process by which we want to make sure that each student that comes through the door knows that they can get a breakfast. Next slide, please. Some of the participation drivers that actually help us, get the students in the buildings and wanting to eat, again, are the student engagement piece. We did last year actually implement hot chocolate in the winter months. So it's just the milk heated up, and it's something that we do in the high school. So it brings the kids into the area, they can smell it, they see other folks with it, and it's really something that they enjoy this year. We also do something what we call a hearty breakfast. So this is an enhanced breakfast, right? So if you think about what someone said, are we comparing it to a big breakfast at McDonald's, right, where you get the biscuits, the eggs, the sausage, the bacon, the potatoes. You have all of these options to bring you in, and this is something that we see that increases participation in high schools. Now, participation in high schools is relatively lower. It's probably the lowest one of our participation metrics, In high schools, breakfast is right around 15%, so we have a lot of opportunity there. So we're really excited about the breakfast after the bell and the mandate, and we are working feverishly to get the principals and everyone engaged so that this is not seen as a barrier. It's really seen as something that helps the entire environment. Okay. Next slide. So having said that, we have a few ways that you can contact us. We're at food@cps.edu. You have you can have our personal contact information. We work very closely. Nutrition and health and wellness at CPS are directly tied. So we work very closely with getting this message out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was super helpful. And we'll dive into our next real world example, Adnan Raja. And we are going to do a breakfast after the bell question and answer with Adnan Raja. And so just to kick it off, I want to just give a little bit of information about the district. As you can see, there's 72,000 students, 126 schools, and they are doing breakfast in the classroom in 5 high schools and 10 middle schools. And the breakfast participation has soared in those high schools, and I gave the example of Smith High School at the very bottom of the slide, where before breakfast in the classroom was implemented, 150 students were participating, and after breakfast in the classroom, they went up to 1,000. So Adnan, are you on the line?
Good afternoon. Yes, I am.
Great. Well, we're super excited to have you. And why don't I just start off with a few questions for you? Adnan, before you implemented breakfast after the bell, what were some of the barriers that you were seeing in your high schools that were stopping students from eating breakfast?
Just like you had mentioned in your PowerPoint and there that, you know, the stigmatism of kids coming down to the cafeteria. The main factor at the school that I was at Smith High School was that we were designed like the letter T. The kids came, the buses would drop them off there. Then the kids had to make a choice whether to go right to the cafeteria or left to the classrooms. And a lot of the kids would always go, you know, to the classrooms because they want to hang out with their friends, this, that, the other. Don't, get down to the cafeteria because it was sort of out of the way. By the time the bell would ring, they'd have a long distance to get to their class. So, that was something that was always slowing them down. And that was just a lot of, they felt that, there's a lot of peer pressure. No, I don't want to go down to the cafeteria. I don't want to be seen in there. That along those ideas of that you were saying about the, the status of a free lunch or a free breakfast and, that type of things. So, those were a lot of the concerns the students had, it was, hindering our numbers over there.
Gotcha. And so I'm curious as to why you chose breakfast in the classroom, because that seems like a scary model for high schools. So I'd love to hear why you thought that was a good fit in your high schools.
When we started it originally, I used a term that was, to me, it was like a golden egg that was dropped into my lap. When we discussed it and I found out about it, this became a win-win for our administration and for us as in school nutrition, because with the way a lot of times the kids are always going up and down the halls, they're lingering around, they'll be in the cafeterias, thus being bell rings and they're tardy and they're late. So what allowed us to do was, once the bell rings, the students go straight directly to the classrooms, and we have the breakfast already delivered there for them. So for us, it turned out to be, the positive was that everybody had breakfast in front of them. And it's like anything, when you're with your friends, you're out anywhere, and if you see if your friend is eating, then you're also going to eat. So that really helped our participation in that, in that sense right there, because the food was, it's right there in front of them. They don't have to, it wasn't about a choice. Then it was just a matter of, what do I want to eat, not eat? But then when you see someone sitting right across from you or next to you, they're eating, it takes that peer pressure off and everybody starts to eat.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so in order to get the breakfast to the classroom, did you say that your cafeteria staff did the delivering?
Yes, we did this in that sense that in the district we actually deliver the food to the classroom prior to the bell ring. So we are in the hallways delivering to each classroom, and we make sure that we put it inside the classroom and then close the doors. And as we do that, we are out of the hallways before the first bell rings, before the students come in. So there's no we're not in there in the hallways with the kids and with our carts and stuff like that. So we're trying to get 5 minutes prior to all the bells ringing. We're trying to be in and out, deliver the food. It was there at Smith High School. We had 66 classrooms we delivered to. It was with I delivered with myself and 5 other people, and we delivered over 1,000 breakfasts in, I would say, about 15 minutes.
Wow, that's very impressive. And so you must have had a very streamlined delivery process using your staff. So how long did that process actually take to get worked out? Did you practice ahead of time? Did you do any dry runs? How did you get that system in place that was running so smoothly? Actually, it was, over time, a short period of time, we perfected it, and I've, kept that model going. It was through a trial and error. We learned a few mistakes here, a few things there, but the key thing was to have the proper equipment to deliver it with and the containers to have. And it actually was very, pretty simple in doing this. So, we looked at the needs that we had, where we had to deliver it to, and then based on that, what all equipment we needed, and it's gone very smoothly. That's fantastic. And so it sounds like the number of paid students also increased participation, right? Not just the free and reduced population, but the number of paid students. Is that right? Yes, because then it also becomes like some of the high school, they're also CEP. With the community eligibility provision. So, but when you see it, and this was a fact that we had kids that were not eating, that would not go down to the cafeteria. But when the food was there in front of them, and then the thing about it is because these are high school kids, some of them don't necessarily want to eat the entree itself, but they'll want the juice or the drink, so that in order for them to to take that, they have to take all the components. So they might choose only to use, take the fresh fruit and have the juice, or, whatever it is are the components that they want. Maybe they don't want the entree, but they take it, they receive it, and they choose to have it later. So that's the good thing about it when it's right there in front of you. If you're a little bit thirsty, but you see that juice is right there, so you take it, thus at least they're consuming something. They're getting, some nutrition out of it. Yeah. And so the students are then responsible for cleaning up the breakfast trash, or how does that work in your school? Well, what we provide we have 2 containers that go to the classrooms. We have a hot container and a cold container. And we also provide them with a trash bag, so that, because that was one of the resistance factors that we got from the faculty, not part of the administration. The administration loved the idea because it sort of, I hate to use the term, but it sort of locked down the campus. There was less movement in their campus, but the faculty was concerned that, with having food and some waste and all that in there. But we provide them with a trash bag as well. So at the end of the breakfast time the allotted time that they have, all their trash is put in that, and it's taken out as soon as breakfast is finished. They place their containers outside in the hallways, and they place the trash outside as well. So the onus is on the teachers to make sure that all the students are putting all the trash in the bag, and then it's going outside, so there's no garbage that's being left around in the classrooms. That's and great. We also tell them not to leave any food around. If they don't want it, then go ahead. If they can discard it, or they can put it in their bag or whatever for later. But it's up to the teachers, and it teaches them the responsibility. The teachers, the students, everybody to clean it up, and so that way we don't have any issues afterwards. And Adnan, is your district 100% CEP or just certain schools? Just certain schools. Okay, gotcha. I'd love to hear about what kind of innovative approaches to breakfast after the classroom you have incorporated in your high schools. Okay. Well, one thing we definitely do is, in order for that is,
we also do menu testing. So every couple of months we'll try new items, and so what we do that is we'll send them like 2 entrees that day, like a sample entree as well, and then we get them to do we send up ballots into the classrooms, or we'll have the manager or another staff member go and let the teacher know that this day ahead we're going to be doing this testing. So we'll walk into the classroom and we try to get their input and see what they like, what they don't like. So for the upcoming menus, we're going to put them in there, and that really once you get that involvement with the students, that really does help, because if it's an item, instead of just trying an item, like that, we get the kids' input on it, and that really helps them to be a part of it. And they feel that, they feel empowered when they're doing it like that. The other things that we've always done is that is that we'll ask the teachers at the beginning of each semester, and at any time they can use it, but the roster that they check off the students with is, I sort of implement it like as that's an order form for a restaurant, so that these are our customers. So we ask them, please give us what choice of juice that they want, or what choice of milk that they want. And so that that empowers them. And, because I do look at them as our customers. These are, young adults, they're high schoolers, they're going into that. So it makes them feel like they're actually, it's like a restaurant, they're actually placing an order. And so we do allow them to change that up, every so often, when we'll put a new flavor of milk in there, a juice in there, or a different type of fruit. We just ask them, so that sort of empowers them a little bit in that. And that's really helped us a lot in the ways of what foods the kids like and don't like.
Yeah, it's super valuable to have that student feedback. And so it sounds like that also helps just keep participation up, because you're involving the students regularly. Do you have anything else that you do specifically to keep the participation up over time?
Well, we listen to what they want, as far as needs go, and we try to address them with the little things that we do. As far as giving them condiments and that type of thing, because like you said earlier, that we are in competition with fast food industry and other franchises and of that nature. So being that we are school nutrition, we also have to try so give them what they're asking for. What can we do to make them make this meal even a little bit more, not so more nutritious, but more appealing. Give them, if they're asking for condiments, a certain type, ketchups, hot sauces, these type of things. If that's what helps to get them to be eating the food, we try to help out with that and address those needs, and give them what they're requiring from us.
And so we have a lot of folks on the webinar today who are listening in that are just learning about Breakfast After the Bell. What advice would you give to schools that are just learning about Breakfast After the Bell, or might even be interested in implementing a model? What would you say to them?
A breakfast in the classroom is it's a win-win for everybody, because as I have proof of the numbers at Smith, our numbers went from 150 to 200 all the way up to 1,000. We were a population of, I think, 1,400 kids, and we 1,300 kids, and so we did increase that much. The administration was happy because they had less students coming in late, less students, lingering around the cafeterias, in the hallways, and all that. It locked it down. The initial startup to get the numbers organized is the initial challenge. After that, breakfast in the classroom is so smooth. Just recently, we had a manager who was very reluctant to try breakfast in the classroom. The principal and the manager both came to me and individually and thanked me and said this was the best idea. It is such a win-win for everybody that you have more kids eating, the food is there, there's less confusion and chaos going in your hallways and your classrooms. Like once again, I said, administration is very happy because how organized the school is being run. In the mornings, there's less movement with the students and all that. The children are eating because their food is right there in front of them. Because some of the kids get there, they don't feel like going to the cafeteria, standing in line. But when the food is right there in front of them, it's a win-win. They will take it, and you can see the difference. And I'm a firm believer, like some of the teachers that gave us resistance, they even noticed it because a lot of the kids would be talking in the classroom in the beginning, but a lot of the kids, if they're eating something, then they're not talking, and that gives them time to, lesson plan, get them started out and get a control of the class that way in the morning. So everybody that we've dealt with, it's always been a positive experience for whether it's administration, whether it's faculty, or even the students, and even the cafeteria staff. Students have told me individually, privately, that have come up to me, and they love the idea because sometimes peer pressure, their friends don't want them to go down there, so they feel that they are embarrassed to go down there, and this gives them a chance to stay up. The food is right there, but they get to eat, and they don't feel that peer pressure on them.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is there anything else you want to share with your experience with breakfast in the classroom in high schools? This has been fantastic.
I mean, I just encourage everybody to give it a try because it's like, once again, it is a win-win. Everybody, it's such a positive thing. I just love the idea of breakfast in the classroom because it just makes it's just such a positive thing for everybody. That's all I can just say. Encourage on that. Just don't give in. Just give it a try, and it will be a success.
Great. Thank you so much, Adnan.
Thank you.
All right, so we have come to the question portion of the webinar. Please submit your questions via the chat box, and we will go ahead and answer them. If I can answer them, I will. Otherwise, our speakers today are more than happy to answer.
Okay, great. I do have a question from the line from Francis. He was referring to the slide in the beginning that's discussing the breakfast after the bell models. It was a breakdown of the different model types. And I will go ahead and just go right back to that. It's in the beginning. It's slide 9. So in reference to this, Francis asked, are these percentages calculated from high schools or a variety of schools, such as elementary, middle school, high school, etc.?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And we took a total of 798 schools in 8 states. The 8 states are Arkansas, Colorado, Illinois, Louisiana, Maryland, Montana, North Carolina, and Virginia, and it was all across the board. It was elementary, middle, and high schools. So these are the average participation rates.
All right. For high schools, how is the vast increase in waste handled, and how do you navigate that with custodial staff who suddenly have more work?
That's a great question. I'm actually going to ping it to our speakers. I'd love to hear what our speakers have to say about that.
Well, what we do in Guilford County is that our staff actually picks up the trash, but some of the schools we have student volunteers that help pick up the trash because that gives them work to do in there. So it's actually not a burden onto our custodial staff. So, because when we're picking up our containers, we're also picking up the trash, so that is part of our the cafeteria part. They're responsible for that.
This is Alex from Chicago. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, if you want to chime in, go ahead.
Yeah. So right now we have, we call it Food Share, and it's kind of our food recovery program that is happening at lunch. And with the big push for more breakfast in the classroom and our limited staff, we're working on to figure out some solutions where we can get this Food Share to utilize breakfast. We know that there's a lot of cereals and granola bars, more packaged items that we can collect from breakfast. The items we're collecting at lunch are mostly whole fruits, and then they're being redistributed to local community organizations. So at this time, this is not something that we're doing in all schools for breakfast. We certainly have schools that, as the students are bringing down the rosters of who participated in breakfast, once they're bringing those back to the dining center, they will also bring along a bag of any items that students did not want or did not want or didn't want to eat, and no other student in their classroom wanted either. So that's kind of what we're doing right now at breakfast.
Great. We have a few more questions. We're just going to go ahead and read the questions out loud as they come in. Great. So the question is, what if your school is not CEP and you have to charge the reduced and paid students? How do you make sure you are collecting the right amount? And I'm also going to defer always first to our speakers because you have more school experience. So if you all want to chime in, feel free. The line is open for you.
Okay. Well, in Guilford County, all the high schools that are implementing this are CEP, and we've kept it that way so that avoids that. We wouldn't, we haven't come to that challenge yet because we haven't implemented that in those schools that are not.
And although Chicago is all CEP, our dining staff still uses forecasting just on, the specific menu items and what they're paired with each day. We know that if it's something, we have like a breakfast quesadilla that goes over really well with students. So we know on those days that we need to prep less of the cold options, so less of maybe the cereal or the yogurt than we do of the hot item. So really just trying to use forecasting as much as possible, even in a CEP school.
Thanks. And I want to chime in as well. I want to reread the question. What if your school is not CEP and you have to charge the reduced and paid students? How do you make sure you are collecting the right amount? If I'm understanding that correctly, are you saying collecting just the numbers? So definitely there are schools that are not CEP that are doing breakfast after the bell, and really they have a tally system where when they get breakfast delivered to the classroom, they'll have a roster, the name of the students that are in the classroom, and certainly with high schoolers, they can go and check off their names, or you can have the teacher check off the names, and then that information gets brought back to the food service department, and then that's how they tally all the paid and reduced students and to make sure they have the books correct.
I'm sorry, I misheard the question. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Allison, do you want to say something else?
I was just going to say, I'm sorry, I misheard the question, but it's exactly what Summer said. Our students, we're still collecting names of students, even though we're CEP, and it's just a roster that every teacher has, and then either students will deliver the roster back down to the dining center, or we'll have custodial staff or security guards come and collect each of the rosters from the classrooms.
Great, thank you. Okay, so the next question I have is, do you have examples of much smaller school districts who implemented breakfast after the bell? We do. I can connect with you offline, and I have, I think I have all of your information, so I'll be able to connect with you, but smaller schools have some of the same challenges in terms of promoting the breakfast program, getting students on board. The same kind of best practices in terms of soliciting feedback are highly recommended. Branding your breakfast program, creating excitement around that, all of those best practices definitely apply. And just being creative and innovative, really adapting to the needs of the student population. I know rural schools, don't have the same kind of resources, meaning they might not have as many cafeteria staff working. But as you heard from our speakers, you can definitely tap students to come into play and be a part of the program, and maybe that means students deliver breakfast to the classroom or help with cleanup. So there are ways to be successful, even if you're just a small school. And the next question is,
so question for Adnan, how does Guilford County students, how do they place their orders daily? And how are meals handled that are not consumed by a student in the classroom?
Okay, so what we do is like we offer every student a hot entree, and there's a menu that we have that so that each day everybody knows, you know, what they'll be getting. Now with that hot menu, we also with the entrees is if it's a meat entree and we have vegetarians or diet orders or excuse me, or religious preferences for you know, they don't eat meat or pork or whatever it may be. We've also implemented, then we will send cereal or another choice for that student, because like, again, going back to where we take the order in that sense of when we ask them when they're on that checkoff list that they have, that, you know, we can put a code beside it with that student's name. So, you know, we offer it that way. You know, we're making sure we're giving the kids what they want. And if we do know there's certain kids that never eat every day, so we don't send a meal for them. But if they decide on a day that they do want to eat, we usually have the teacher either email or call down to the cafeteria, and we'll send up another entree for that child, or an entree of juice, and, you know, the reimbursable meal, we'll send it up for that to that classroom for that child if they decide that they, you know, they don't want to eat on a regular basis and then they change their mind. So we do try to cater to that. I believe I didn't get the second part of that question. What was that again?
How are meals handled that are not consumed by a student in the classroom?
Okay, so we do encourage that, you know, every student take a meal, and generally what we want per DPI is the kids that are absent that day, we ask the teachers to make sure that they send back that reimbursable meal back to us, to the cafeteria, for the ones that are that have been marked absent on their roster.
Okay, great, thank you. We have another question from Nisette. She would like to know who worked with the teachers that were reluctant to have breakfast in the classroom. What were their concerns and how was it resolved? Also, did any administrators have similar concerns?
Okay. For us, I actually work with the teachers in my school, and in the beginning there were concerns and reluctancies and issues like that, but as they started seeing it, it was a very quick realization that this was a positive effect on the students, because the kids they were paying attention more after they had eaten something and all that, so they could see it. So the teachers themselves seen what a quick turnaround and what a positive thing this became. Their biggest concerns were about trash and bugs and that type of thing. But once they, you know, we made it clear to them that it's on them to make sure that they get rid of all the food and all that. Those were the type of things that it took it away. So it didn't take long for teachers to get on board. And when I say long, I'm talking about probably within a week or 2 weeks time of starting the program that they were there. And now as a supervisor, I've been implementing breakfast in the classroom. I think this school year we implemented it into 4 different elementary schools, and we've also had a very positive feedback with teachers as well there. And we did have a principal this year who was very reluctant and but wanted to change it and tried it, and within the first week she contacted me and telling me that how great this program was now, and she was so glad that she did go through with it, because one of her peers had mentioned it to her, and then she allowed me to do it because she wanted, actually was talking about possibly doing a grab and go. And then I talked to her, you know, told her all the positives and all that. We tried this, and she was she's been very grateful and appreciative of the fact that we did go this route.
Thanks.
Yeah, so in Chicago, we do get pushback from both principals and, or like I would say, administration and teachers. We really will have conversations with network chiefs who are all very supportive of all of our wellness work and wellness policies, and principals kind of report to them. So once we have the buy-in from them, it's pretty easy to get buy-in from teachers, but we do have, as Crystal was explaining, our food service directors who have groups of like 20 or 30 schools. They're in multiple times a week. They're very familiar with the dining staff. They're familiar with a lot of the teachers and the school staff. as well as the principal, and we'll have them have conversations. Usually it's after one school does it, and as Adnan said, other principals talking, you know, oh, we did this, here were the things that didn't work out so well that we needed to work through, and here are best practices, really opening up those lines of communication between administration and teachers to let them know that it isn't as scary as it may sound. We have found that that really helps.
And to sort of piggyback onto that is, it's different. There's different needs for different people. Administrations have different requirements compared to what school nutrition has. So this program does really give win-wins to administration. And, you know, if they want to sort of lock down their campus, make it secure, make it like that, these type of this program does really help them do that. So that's a win for them. And then again, you know, it's a win for us because it definitely increases our participation, and it's a win for the students because they're getting the food right there in front of them. So it's, you know, it's, when I say it's a win-win, it really is.
Thanks, guys. All right, so I have two more questions. One, you speak to preventing childhood obesity. Can you point to good data supporting this versus the concern about providing too many calories, especially if it's the healthier options that aren't being consumed?
I can start off with this. So there's definitely research. We actually have a resource on this that we know for a fact that kids who eat school breakfast have healthier diets overall. We see that they get more nutrition, they're doing better in terms of their vitamins and minerals, and the calories that they're getting by consuming school breakfast are nutrient dense, as opposed to a soda or something like that that's empty calories. So we know that. And then in terms of obesity, kids who eat school breakfast are much less likely to be obese or be overweight. And in fact, we also know that the double dipping, like if kids have breakfast at home and then they also have breakfast at school, even though they're having breakfast twice because it's school breakfast, it's very healthy, it has to adhere to USDA guidelines, there's no additional risk for obesity or overweight there. And I have your name who submitted that question, so I can follow up with you with those resources or those research sources. Any of our speakers want to chime in on that?
I would say that in Chicago, with such a high free and reduced percentage, we're about 87% of our population would qualify for free or reduced. So we know that, or we've learned that if a student is taking another breakfast, they probably need another breakfast. Or if they're taking it just for a milk or a juice or, you know, just one component of it. We know that, you know, food recovery programs would help, but most often, if a student's taking a second breakfast, they are probably hungry enough where they need it.
And that's similar.
Go ahead, Adnan.
I was just going to say, similar like that is the kids that are eating these, you know, the need is there. So it's not, you know, to us, because we are within all the guidelines, the calories and all the carbs and all that kind of stuff is very calculated. And so it's definitely, it's not more, to me, it's not so much as I think is about obesity as it is meeting the needs of these hungry kids that are, you know, consuming this food.
Great, thank you. So it looks like we're pretty much out of time. We only have 1 minute left. We have more questions, so I can connect with those folks who sent in questions offline. But we've had more requests to share those obesity studies and just research sources. So in the follow-up email, I will include that information so everyone can have it. So with that, I want to thank everyone so much for attending, especially our great speakers, Adnan, Crystal, and Allison. Your information was so helpful, and thank you for joining today, and expect a follow-up email with a survey so we can hear what you thought of our webinar and what suggestions that you have for the future. Thank you, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.